Well, for more on this, I'm joined now from Brasilia by journalist Rasheed Abou-Alsamh. He's a former opinion writer for the Brazilian newspaper O Globo and correspondent for Al-Ahram Weekly. In Boston, we have Julio Morais. He organized Bolsonaro's tour of the US in 2017 and is also the founder of the Public Administration Institute. And we have Gianpaolo Baiocchi, who's a professor at New York University and also a part of the Defend Democracy in Brazil movement, which, Gianpaolo, is against Bolsonaro. Straight off the bat, tell me why you don't like him.
It's not that we don't like him. We are worried about the policies that are going to be coming online in Brazil starting the very next few days. We had a very, very successful decade. The World Bank called Brazil in the 2000s, described it as a golden decade, a decade of inclusion and growth and advancement of human rights. And now we have someone who's an admirer of the dictatorship, who is promising to roll back human rights, who's threatening the Amazon, and who's promising to undo a lot of the progressive social policies we've had. So it's not so much about him or even his bombastic statements, but we're very worried, we and many members of the international community, about what will happen in Brazil over the next few weeks and months.
Okay, so Julio Morais, we have Gianpaolo, who's very worried about what might happen down the road because, as has been clearly mentioned by the president himself, he said Pinochet should have murdered more people and he admired the military dictatorship. And we've discussed a lot of these issues in the past. He himself has said that he has now liberated Brazil from socialism and political correctness and an ideology that defends bandits. Is that what you believe, Julio?
Pretty much, yes. And not only me, but the majority of the people believe that Bolsonaro is going to bring change to the Brazilian history right now. That's why the majority vote for him. We vote to remove the Labour Party from the power and put Bolsonaro. Bring change to Brazil. Bring more hope for the Brazilian economy right now, which is in crisis. I agree with Gianpaolo what he said, like we have a good times in Brazil, in the economy speaking, but then we have a crisis, and the crisis was caused by the Works Party, who was in power at the time and bring Brazil to the cause that it is right now. So I believe Bolsonaro has a big challenge right now, fix the economy and unite the people of Brazil. But right now he's been Democrat elected to be the chief of economy.
Rasheed Abou-Alsamh, was it because of the corruption scandals that the Workers' Party found itself in that caused the majority of voters to swing to the right in reaction to it?
Yes, it was indeed. After 14 years of the Workers' Party being in power in Brazil, first with Lula da Silva, who was elected twice, and then with Dilma Rousseff, who was also elected twice to office. And the amount of corruption that came out in the Mensalão, the corruption scandal, and then in the current car wash corruption scandal, which is still ongoing, has really just, disgusted most of Brazilians, and they said enough is enough, we want change. So they gambled on it, and let's see what they're going to get with this gamble. Yeah,
this is fascinating because the person he's also chosen as justice minister is Sergio Moro, the same judge at the center of car wash, which sort of highlights the divide currently in Brazil. Gianpaolo, both the guests have spoken about this being a democratic election. This is what the people want. There was an Ibope poll recently that came out, which said that 3/4 of Brazilians polled say the government, this incoming government, Bolsonaro's, is on the right course. Tell me what's going on there, Gianpaolo, if this is such a terrible guy.
Well, so Bolsonaro's campaign was very effective at mobilizing this anti-Workers' Party sentiment. I just have to correct our last guest. Brazil has a very corrupt political system, and the chasing after this corruption, the strengthening of the institutions that brought a lot of this to light occurred under Workers' Party administrations. The Ministério Público, for instance, was significantly strengthened under Lula and Dilma. Now, the Workers' Party has had corruption in it. It's not the only party that has corruption, including Bolsonaro's own party. Many of its members have been mentioned in these corruption investigations. But what happened in Brazil was a very effective sort of political maneuvering, the media effort to frame this as a workers' party or as a leftist problem only when everyone knows quite well that the corruption is widespread. That said, you know, under the last few years of the Workers' Party, there has been a lot of resentment, not only at the corruption, but, for example, upper middle class and elite Brazilians have felt left out. The commodities boom slowed down, so the economic growth wasn't as strong as it had been. You know, and of course, we also have to talk about some of the influence in the election, like the WhatsApp bots and so on. But it's true. There is a popular support for Bolsonaro. Nonetheless, we remain very, very worried about what this will actually mean for the majority of Brazilians.
So, Julio Morais, would it be fair to say then that, okay, the middle class didn't like what was happening over the past few years under the Workers' Party, but now Bolsonaro's coming in, he's going to clean up the political system, and he's going to revive the economy, but at the expense of the working class, at the expense of blacks, who he says we don't have a historic debt towards, at the expense of women's rights, because he's even spoken about fellow parliamentarians in terms of, well, she's too ugly, I wouldn't even rape her, at the expense of indigenous people, and so on. Is that the sacrifice you have to make to regrow the economy and to clean up corruption?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's a sacrifice what he's planning to do with the minority, especially with the indigenous right now. What he's trying to do is make everyone equal under the Brazilian's law. The LGBT, he changed the status, so he put the LGBT group, the community, into the human rights cabinet, which is going to be equal to everyone. Everyone that mistreats anyone, like it doesn't matter the sex, the sex orientation, the color, the background, the law, it's equal to everyone. But it's a new challenge right now. What Bolsonaro is going to bring is hope. We are tired of the same thing over and over again. The corruption, like Gianpaolo said, it's been for a long time, but then like Bolsonaro is going to bring hope, and I hope he's going to change that. You know what I'm saying? Like it's too early to say he's going to do a good job, but so far his idea, it's been pretty much good for the Brazilian
again, Julio,
citizen.
just to be clear, right? You say there's an equalizing element here, but you're saying hope. What hope is there for gay people if he's saying that being gay is the same as being a pedophile? What hope is there for many blacks who are at the bottom of the ladder when it comes to the social and economic scale when he says, we have no historic debt towards these people. I didn't enslave them. I have nothing to do with this. What hope is it to those minorities if he's already saying from the very outset, I don't really care about you?
Well, sometimes he say more than he actually do, or actually he's playing, or he express himself the way that he shouldn't express. But I think like make everyone equal under the eyes of the law is the big change right now. Why, if someone get called gay or other name, should be special treated than someone call me like something else, or black people being like disqualified or something like that. It's kind of like everyone is equal by the laws of the of Brazil.
Okay, so Gianpaolo, what we're hearing from Julio is that from Bolsonaro supporters, they felt there was a kind of overcorrection over the years and special privileges for protected groups, and there's the swing against it now. Tell me what's going on there, Gianpaolo.
So there's definitely a swing against it, and Julio is maybe saying it more politely, but he's expressing the sense that many middle-class Brazilians have, and elite Brazilians have, that under the Workers' Party there was too much affirmative action, there was too much discussion of LGBT issues, feminism was talked about too much. But if you look at the fact, and if you look at what Brazil is as a country and where it has been and where it's come, these are pretty difficult statements to accept. Brazil is the largest, has got one of the largest black populations in the world. But if you look at the human development indicators, if you separate black Brazilians and white Brazilians, black Brazilians fare very, very badly. There's almost no black middle class in Brazil. There's almost no black doctors in Brazil. There's almost no black lawyers in Brazil, in a country that's 50% black.
Right.
So one of the things under the Workers' Party, which people find most upsetting, or people, this reaction has been against, have been the very effective, in my view, affirmative action policies. So universities in Brazil today have roughly 50% set aside for students from public schools, Afro-Brazilians and indigenous Brazilians. And so you had these elite establishments like University of São Paulo, Federal University of Bahia, where the lawyers, the country's elites would go to get trained, and now half of the incoming class looks very different. Of course, the number of university students also doubled at this time, so in fact, no one lost. But this is something that people find very upsetting, and it's an uncomfortable reality. And I think one of the things moving forward for the left in Brazil is how to think and how to present these ideas in a different way. You know, including Afro-Brazilian students, someone from an oppressed community in a university setting can sound like you're giving someone else an advantage when in fact you're actually correcting. So there was a messaging problem.
Right, Rasheed, I want to ask you about Brazil's role in the world and how we might expect Brazil's foreign policy to play out. Donald Trump congratulated Jair Bolsonaro on Twitter, saying, "Congratulations to President Jair Bolsonaro, who just made a great inauguration speech. The USA is with you." Jair Bolsonaro replied, "Dear Mr. President, real Donald Trump." He got the wrong name, by the way. He tweeted a parody account. I think he was so excited to reply. "I truly appreciate your words of encouragement. Together, under God's protection, we shall bring prosperity and progress to our people." Yeah, he left off that second D, but Trump got the message, I guess. Rasheed, so let's look at Trump's congratulations, Bolsonaro's reaction, and also, let me just add to that, Rasheed, the fact that Bolsonaro and his foreign minister, Ernesto Araujo, are keen to move Brazil's embassy to Jerusalem, away from Tel Aviv, recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. What does that tell us about what we can expect for Brazil's foreign policy and where it sees itself in the world?
Well, Jair Bolsonaro has already announced that his first overseas trip is in March, I think, is going to be to Israel to visit Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and to visit Israel. Bolsonaro himself is Catholic, but his wife is practicing evangelical Christian. And in Brazil, there's a huge movement among evangelical Christians who support Israel and think Israel is a promised land, and they want Brazil to really have much deeper relations with Israel. The problem with all of this is that Brazil has huge commercial relations with Arab countries in terms of meat exports. Last year, I think Brazil exported around $6 billion worth of meat to Arab and Muslim countries, and to Israel, it was a bit more than $200 million. So there's really no comparison. And already the Arab League has said, if Brazil moves their embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, they might retaliate, looking for other, sellers of meat.
Right.
Saudi Arabia is like the largest importer of Brazilian chicken in the world. Yeah. They imported 591,000 a million tons of chicken in 2017. So, and Bolsonaro is very close to Brazil's agricultural sector and the agricultural industry, and they're going to pressure him now not to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, because they're afraid of losing all these markets in the Arab world.
Yes, the agriculture minister, Teresa Cristina, worried about it. So a little bit of friction very early on. Julio, as a Bolsonaro supporter, you must be thrilled that Bolsonaro's now aligned with Trump as opposed to someone like Maduro?
Yes, definitely. Just a quick reminder, this is the guy was labeled as a fascist and Nazist, and now he's bringing Israel close to Brazilian. But
it is possible, Julio. You do understand, Julio. It is possible to both domestically court the far right, but also support Israel in terms of foreign policy. The U.S. president has done that as well, with the alt-right movement at home and supporting Netanyahu. So the two don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Yes, but just because, like the left side, the Works Party had labeled a guy different than he actually is right now. But going back to the economy, it's going to be a lot of pressure right now if he actually move forward to the embassy to Jerusalem. I understand that, and I think like he should think about it twice before, because you want to make allies, not ignore the allies that we have with the Arabic community right now.
Okay, Gianpaolo, very finally, is there anything that you see within this administration and this president that makes you want to give him a chance and see how it goes?
Well, it's an incoherent administration. So, you know, we have the competing economic imperatives, so the agribusiness pushing on one hand, and on the other hand, you have this very conservative cultural social discourse and causing him to do these things like these provocations like move Brazil's embassy. So what gives me some hope is actually that this is going to be a bit of a rudderless ship. And it's going to be these competing interests, and this is going to give the opportunity for other parties and for the democratic forces in Brazil to align, to find room to resist, to prevent the rollback of some of these very, very important social policies. I personally don't have anything against Bolsonaro supporters per se. And I know I don't get agitated about his statements. I worry more about the policies and the policy outcomes, which is why mostly I remain very, very worried.
Rasheed Abou-Alsamh, Julio Morais, and Gianpaolo Baiocchi. I've got to move on, but I thank you all for joining us here on the Newsmakers.